My name is Vorexel. I am a senior diplomatic correspondent aboard the grand vessel of the Kethoran Dominion, and I have witnessed the rise and fall of 47 civilizations across 12 star clusters. I say this not to boast, but because you need to understand something very clearly before I tell you this story. Nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the humans. It started on a neutral tier, a floating diplomatic station orbiting the gas giant Orivus 4. The station smelled of recycled atmosphere and the particular anxiety that fills a room when powerful species sit too close to one another. Representatives from 9 galactic powers had gathered for the Summit of Terms, which is a fancy title for, let us all decide who gets to bully whom without starting another war. The Kethoran king, his name was Durrath-Vokk, sat at the center of the circular chamber like he always did. Fat with authority, armored in ego, his 6 upper limbs draped over the arms of his reinforced seat, as if the universe itself was a footrest he had borrowed and never returned. Durrath-Vokk had crushed 2 civilizations in the last century alone. His fleet numbered in the tens of thousands. His scientists had mapped the death frequency of every known species in the galaxy. He was not the kind of figure you interrupted, and yet there was a human sitting across from him. Her name was Mara Voss. She was not tall. She was not physically impressive in any way that registered on our scanning arrays. No biological armor, no secondary nervous system, no redundant organ clusters. She wore a plain gray uniform with a small pin on her chest that I later learned was a flag of a country on a planet that, until 70 years ago, the galaxy did not even know existed. She had short brown hair, flat fingernails, and eyes the color of something I do not have a word for in Kethoran. Still, like water that has decided it is done moving. Durrath-Vokk spoke first, as Durrath-Vokk always did. He leaned forward, his bioluminescent throat sacs pulsing amber with amusement, and he looked at Mara Voss the way a predator looks at a creature it has not yet decided whether to eat or simply step on. Human, he said, his voice carrying that specific frequency that makes smaller species feel their bones vibrate. Your kind arrived at this summit by hitching a transport through Velcorridor 9. Borrowed technology. Borrowed passage. Your world has no fleet of consequence, no planetary shield array, and no biological enhancements worth recording. He paused, letting that sink in the way a stone sinks in still water. Tell me honestly, and I promise I will not laugh too loudly. Why are you here? The chamber went quiet. Not politely quiet. Desperately quiet. The kind of quiet where every diplomat in the room is suddenly very interested in the surface of the table in front of them. I watched Ambassador Priel of the Suvari Collective slowly retract 3 of his 4 eyes. I watched the Gorvan delegate shift at her seat and begin reviewing documents she had already reviewed. Nobody wanted to be associated with whatever was about to happen to this human. Durrath-Vokk was not finished. He continued, his amber glow deepening to something closer to gold. You are a young species, violent among yourselves, scattered across one single world. You have had spaceflight for what, 8 decades? Your average citizen cannot even agree on basic facts about your own history. He spread his upper limbs wide, gesturing to the room at large. I have pets on my home world with longer institutional memory than your entire civilization. And you sit here at my summit, at my table. The gold in his throat turned almost white. And you expect to be taken seriously? He leaned back, satisfied, done. And that was when Mara Voss looked up from the document she had been quietly reading, set it flat on the table with both hands, and met his eyes with those still undecided water eyes of hers. She did not flinch. She did not tremble. She did not look to her colleagues for reassurance or to the room for sympathy. She simply said 2 words. Quiet. Calm. Certain. Try me. I will tell you something I am not proud of as a veteran correspondent who has reported on interstellar conflict for 60 years. My first instinct was to laugh. My second instinct, arriving approximately 1.5 seconds later like a messenger who had stopped to reconsider whether delivering this particular message was actually a good career decision, was something else entirely. It was fear. Not of her. Not yet. But of the look on Durrath-Vokk's face. Because Durrath-Vokk, the king who had never been answered back, The king who had ground civilizations into memory and ash was no longer glowing gold. He was glowing red. And somewhere behind me, very softly, the Gorvan delegate whispered to nobody in particular, Oh, that is going to be interesting. I have a personal rule as a correspondent. Never editorialize during a summit. Stay neutral. Stay quiet. Record everything and feel nothing until you are safely back aboard your vessel with a warm nutrition cube and a locked cabin door. I broke that rule approximately 4 seconds after Mara Voss said those 2 words because I leaned over to my colleague Brixton and whispered very professionally, We are all going to die in this room. Brixton did not disagree. Durrath-Vokk rose from his seat. Slowly, deliberately, the way a tectonic plate rises. The chamber pressure system immediately kicked in to compensate for his full standing height, which was impressive in the specific way that things designed to end other things tend to be impressive. His 6 limbs extended. His bioluminescent markings shifted from red to a pulsing, deep crimson that, in Cathoran culture, I can only translate as, I have decided this conversation is now a funeral. He pointed one massive limb directly at Mara Voss. You, he said, with the kind of quiet that is louder than screaming, are one person, from one world, with one borrowed ship, and you said those words to me. Mara Voss folded her hands on the table. I did. Do you know what I did to the last species that spoke to me with that tone? I read the file, she said. Twice, actually. The Cerevii, yes? Lovely planet. Shame about the oceans. The room took a collective breath and held it like a hostage. Durrath-Vokk stared at her. The crimson in his markings pulsed faster. And then, very slowly, he sat back down. Not out of restraint. Out of something that looked disturbingly like recalculation. You are either the bravest creature I have encountered, he said, or the most catastrophically stupid. People keep telling me it is one of those 2 things, Mara replied. I have never been sure which. And then she opened the document she had set down and slid it, physically, across the table toward him. Flat. Face up. No ceremony. Durrath-Vokk looked at it. Then he looked at her. Then he looked at it again. I cannot see the document from where I was sitting, but I watched the crimson in his markings do something I had never seen it do in 60 years of covering Cathoran diplomacy. It flickered. Ambassador Priel of the Suvari Collective quietly unretracted his eyes. The Gorvan delegate stopped pretending to review her documents. Every single representative in that chamber leaned, almost in unison, about 3 centimeters forward. This, Durrath-Vokk said slowly, is not possible. And yet, said Mara Voss, you have had spaceflight for 80 years. 79, technically. We'll like to round up. It sounds more confident. This technology, he tapped the document with one limb, and even from across the chamber I could hear the tap was not aggressive. It was careful, the way you tap something you suspect might tap back. You developed this in 79 years. We had good reasons to work fast, she said. You showed up. Durrath-Vokk set the document down. He studied Mara Voss for a long moment with all 4 of his primary visual organs fully open, which in Cathoran body language means you're looking at something you did not expect to need to take seriously and are now very urgently revising that position. How many of your people know about this? Enough, she said. How long have you been developing it? Long enough. He leaned forward. And you came here, alone, with this, to a room full of species that could reduce your world to orbital debris, and you sat down and waited for me to mock you. I needed you to mock me, she said simply. I needed you to say it out loud, in front of everyone, so that when I responded, nobody in this room could pretend the conversation had not happened. She glanced around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every delegate present. Still, unhurried, like she had already seen how this ended and found it acceptable. So, now everyone has heard it. Now everyone knows what Earth brought to this table. And now everyone can decide, freely and clearly, whether they want to be on the right side of what comes next. The silence that followed was a completely different kind of silence from the one that had preceded it. The first silence had been fear, embarrassed, secondhand fear, the fear of watching someone smaller walk towards something enormous. This silence was something else. This silence was the specific, rare, slightly uncomfortable feeling that occurs when a room full of powerful people realizes, more or less simultaneously, that the power in the room has quietly rearranged itself, and nobody got notification. Durrath-Vokk looked at the document one more time. Then he looked at Maravas. And Durrath-Vokk, king of the Kethoran Dominion, crusher of civilizations, the figure before whom 47 species had bowed without being asked twice, said something I have never, in 60 years, heard him say to anyone. "What do you want?" Maravas picked up her document, folded it once, and tucked it back inside her uniform with the calm of a person who had packed it that morning fully expecting to bring it home. "A seat," she said. "A real one. Not a courtesy chair at the edge of the table. Not an observer status position with no binding vote. A seat. Equal weight. Equal voice. Earth at this table. As a full sovereign power." She paused. And an apology for the comment about the pets. Brixton grabbed my arm. I grabbed the recording console. Because Durrath-Vokk, after a silence that lasted exactly 6 seconds and felt considerably longer, inclined his massive head downward. Not far, not low, but enough. The way mountains do not bow, but sometimes, under the right conditions, acknowledge the existence of the sky. "Done," he said. I filed my report that evening from my locked cabin with a warm nutrition cube and considerably less certainty about the universe than I had arrived with. My editor flagged the headline as an exaggeration. I told him to run it anyway. It read, "Humanity attends First Galactic Summit. Nobody laughing anymore." He ran it. It was the most accurate thing I have ever written. If this story entertained or taught you something, please like and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us grow and bring you more stories like this. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next story.